I'm as excited as anyone is about the Chargers rookie wide receivers and what their impact could be, but one thing that I think it's led to is people sleeping on Mike Williams.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, the Chargers have a lot more weapons in their wide receiver room. That includes Mike Williams. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him and that chemistry that he clearly has with Justin Herbert. They've made some big plays in the past. I don't think they're done quite yet. Also, the Chargers have a lot of really good wide receivers that they're going to have to go up against on their schedule this year. And so that begs the question, should the Chargers go out there and try to acquire a CB1 to try and deal with that problem that they're going up against? And also, Justin Eboigbe, is he out for a breakout or is he a bust? We're going to talk about it.
Yeah, it's a good question. And kind of like Dan Henley, we didn't really see any of him in year one, but it is Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions. So thank you to all the everydayers who gave us your buy or sells today, and we have a bunch of them to get into, including this one from Gerard Robertson, who says Mike Williams played 18 games last year because of the trade that he matched with the Jets and the Pittsburgh bye weeks. I call a healthy Mike Williams sharing X duties with Tre Harris and dominating for 17 games, 750 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So the buy or sell is this, David, especially because I do think he's getting forgotten about in these conversations with this team because of the weapons they added. Buy or sell that Mike Williams can have more than, or as many as 750 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2025.
Yeah, I'm going to buy it. I think that's absolutely something that is attainable for Mike Williams. And the reason why is because there's obvious chemistry there between Justin and Mike. They've done some great things. And also, Mike Dubb has eclipsed 750 yards 4 straight times in his career from 2019 to 2022. So he has had a track record of being able to do that. And Mike's career average as far as yards per reception is right around 15.5. So, to be able to kind of achieve that 750 yard mark, he's going to have to, contribute around 48 receptions, which is about 15.6 yards per reception if you're hitting 750 right on the nose. With 6 TDs, I think that's a stat line that he absolutely can achieve. That's really only an average of about 44 yards per game if you split that over a 17-game season.
Yeah, I like the way you put it. And I mean, if you look at the first 2 seasons he had with Justin Herbert before tearing his ACL in 2023, he averaged 14.5 games, 1,020 yards, and 6.5 touchdowns. So that was obviously a younger version of Mike Williams. And last year, he clearly wasn't the same player in his first year back from his ACL tear. But I do think that maybe when you think about him, you might just be discounting him because of the season he had last year, split between 2 teams with, up and down quarterback situations and no real chemistry. I mean, we know he can still go get the ball when he needs to. A 70% contested catch rate in 2024. 10 of his targets were contested. He brought down 7 of them, which is the least kind of surprising thing ever. But I also think that even though I'm super high on Tre Harris, it might not mean he starts in week 1. And the other part of it is, even though both of them profile as X receivers on the outside, it doesn't mean that both of them can't play on the same field at the same time. They are different enough receivers to be sharing the field at the same time, which could mean maybe they're not directly eating into each other's snaps, even if both of them profile as that X receiver. It doesn't mean Tre Harris has to catch Mike Williams as far as, the ability to be on the field or the, talent to be on the field. He might just have to pass Quentin Johnston, right? Because he's a top 3 wide receiver for you right now. Even if it's like XYZ doesn't necessarily fit there, doesn't mean that both of them can't be on the same field. And the last time we saw Mike Williams and Justin Herbert on the same field, they were about to do something, I think, really special in 2023 before that ACL tear. I mean, he was on pace for, 107 catches and 1,400 yards through 2.5 games in that season. So it could go either way. That's the tough thing here,
Yeah.
because he might not get back to that former self. We don't know. But if he's feeling good, if he's feeling healthy, if he can stay on the field, I think it's a very attainable number that I could buy as well. But let's get to this one from Justin Sisyphus Herbert, who says, buy or sell, the Chargers will platoon like in baseball the wide receivers depending on the field and situation. For example, Mike Will playing on the goal line or in deep shot situations and keeping him on a snap count. I don't really ever remember wide receivers being swapped out frequently. This is interesting, David, because I do think there could be kind of some platoonish qualities to this offense because of just the wide skill set of the receivers they have now.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I love baseball. Me and Dan are obviously big baseball fans as well.
Big Padres fans.
Big Padres fans for sure. So maybe, you're talking about kind of that late inning kind of defensive replacement. I like to kind of liken this actually more closer to a basketball team, which we've kind of have heard that quite a bit. You have a lot of different players in your wide receiver room that have a lot of different skill sets that they bring to the table, as Dan was kind of alluding to. You got the size and the jump ball ability with Mike Williams. You got the quickness and the precision with Ladd. You got the straight line speed with KLS. You got a man beater in Tre Harris, and you have a yak monster in Quentin Johnston. So really, depending on what you're trying to achieve within the play and where you're at on the football field, you can have any kind of combination of these guys out there. And I absolutely believe that they're going to do that because it makes the most sense to try to put these guys out there in situations that their skill sets will shine the most.
Well, and let's see how quickly these rookies can earn the trust of Greg Roman. Let's see how many of wide receivers that Greg Roman wants to use. Because, you have yak guys, you have gadget guys, you have contested catch guys, you have legit deep threats, you have all those guys. You have a route technician in Lam McConkey, and his, he's not going to be platooned with anyone. But I think to the point here, when you're thinking of platoons, you're thinking, okay, this guy's, playing against left-handed pitchers, and this guy's going to be playing against right-handed pitchers. And I think we could see some of that, which is just the fact that it could be game plan specific. Yeah. And some guys are going to be working better against certain teams, and some guys will work better against other teams. But it will come down to how quickly those rookies can get the trust of their OC and their quarterback to get on the field. But if you're having a goal line situation or a red zone situation without Mike Williams, without a real other dominant red zone threat on this team, it feels like that would be a disservice to the talent that you have. So I do think it could be like that. Maybe not as frequently as you're thinking, but I do think we could see packages with different wide receivers in them for sure. Let's get this one from the dude who says, buy or sell, Mike Williams will play in more than 11 games in 2025. Dude, buy or sell?
Yeah, I'm going to buy it. And the reason why is because I feel like the narrative that Mike Williams is kind of injury prone is really overblown in my mind. I mean, he's played 13 or more games in 6 of his 8 NFL seasons. So I think we need to put that in perspective. Yeah, has he lost a couple seasons with some major injuries? Yeah, that's definitely happened. But it's the minority, not the majority when you look at the rest of his career. So I feel like, that coupled with, the Ben Herbert experience here, trying to strengthen things, making him a little bit harder to break, hopefully will keep him on the football field. Because I think last year, all in all, the Chargers did a pretty good job of keeping most of their guys healthy, at least getting them through the week and being able to play on Sundays for the most part. So I feel like that right there, coupled with that kind of myth that he's injury prone, I'm going to buy it. I like the prospects of him eclipsing 11 games.
Well, like we talked about earlier in the show that Gerard Robertson brought up, he played 18 games last year. Now, he was seldom used, and I think that's the hard thing about Mike Williams is the play style is unfortunately really rough on your body. And going up and going down and hitting the ground as hard as he did have its effects. And in a lot of it, though, was like more a week-to-week situation. I mean, 4 of the 5 seasons before 2023 when he tore his ACL, he played in 15-plus games, right? So he'd miss a game here or there, but it wasn't big chunks. And he played in 13 or more games in 5 straight seasons leading up to that torn ACL. Last year, I think coming back from that injury, he clearly wasn't the same physically. So you're hoping he can get back to that, and maybe the talent around them now with those, weapons and other wide receivers will let him not have to carry a huge offensive workload. And that could be the case too, but I'm going to buy it. I think he can play more than 11 games. I mean, he only missed, more than that as a rookie with the Chargers, right? In a terrible rookie season. And then one time other than that in 2023. So I think he can do it. I think the Ben Herbert point's a great point. And I think the one thing with Ben Herbert too is not just keeping guys from having to miss big chunks of time, but also getting guys back as quickly as possible. not a ton of season-ending injuries for the Chargers last year as well. But we still have more great buy or sells to get into, including if the Chargers really need to trade for a cornerback one with a murderer's row of wide receivers they now have on their 2025 schedule. We're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel, though, because the NBA playoffs are in full swing and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action, and FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays that fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And I do love all the information that you can get with FanDuel. They are helping you out and giving you all the tools that you need, but it's also Stanley Cup playoff times, which are my favorite playoffs. And you know I'm riding with the Panthers, who are in a heated series right now, getting chippy a little bit against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I know cursed franchises when I see them, and the Leafs are starting to doubt themselves. And I love the Panthers in Game 5 on Friday night at minus 146 to get the job done straight up. But I could also see him getting an empty netter late in the game, maybe minus 1.5 at plus 172 sounds good. But if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If that wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets to use on these great playoffs that are happening now. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. David, we have more great buy or sells to get into, and thank you to the everydayers who hit us up at Twitter at LockedOnLAC, on Instagram at LockedOnChargers, and also on our YouTube chat that we put out in our YouTube post. So thank you guys everywhere. Make sure you're subscribing and following wherever you can so you never miss the show. But let's get to this next one here, David. From Don to the T on Instagram, who says, buy or sell, we need to trade for a real outside CB1. One love from Montreal, BTFU, which is important, and FTR, which is more important. So thank you for the buy or sell. This is a tough one, David, because obviously CB1s don't come around often. They
don't grow on trees, Daniel.
The teams that have them don't want to give them up, right? Unless it's very specific situations. We've had the Jalen Ramsey conversation. We'd be in favor of it, but it would have to come with some sort of, contractual stipulations that you're not having to pay the dude $20 million, because that's just not going to happen. I'll sell that happen. It's just not good. I just don't see Joe Ortiz spending a legitimate good pick and also having to pay them that. So what other options do you really have besides that? There really aren't any. So I understand wanting to trade for one. I think the options out there to do that at this point are probably pretty slim. But I don't know that they necessarily need a CB1 to have a good season. But I understand why, you could look at the Chargers and kind of the question marks they have with two young guys who've done it in one season and be like, okay, well, can one of those guys really be a true lockdown corner on the outside?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely understand the, kind of the desire to try to want to get somebody that's dominant out there that can just, be a Revis Island type player, but those players are not available. They're just not. I mean, you're not going to let those type of guys that.
And Jalen Ramsey's not that guy right now,
right,
to be honest.
And he's not. No, he's not. And you're not going to get, a Cortland Sutton, or you're not going to get any of those.
Cortland Finnegan?
No. I'm sorry.
Like Patrick Surtain?
You're not going to get a Patrick Surtain. I'm sorry. That's not the level of player that's ever going to be reaching free agency. So, trying to find those type of players is a lot more difficult. Trying to develop your own and trying to turn that player into that guy, I think, is probably going to be the pathway that we are going to be more realistically seeing. And so, to me, the guy that kind of fits the billing on that is Tarheeb Still. I really like what he was able to do as a rookie, grabbing 4 interceptions. And also, kind of the worst performance that he gave up last year was against Denver, where he allowed 73 yards. He never allowed more than 73 yards against any one opponent the rest of the season. So for Tarheeb, I think the big thing for him is just cleaning up the tackling. We know that, that's a little bit more on the high side, a little bit over 15% of a missed tackled percentage. So if he's able to clean that up, not allow those big plays and kind of square, because we've seen it. We know he's a good tackler and we know he's got the ball skills. So if he continues with that trajectory, cleans up the missed tackles, then I feel like he's definitely somebody who could mature into that at some point in his career.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, he has the takeaway ability. Whatever that is, whatever that X factor is that makes somebody a ball hawk, you see it with him in spades, right? It is
Yeah.
just the big kind of not boneheaded, but just the hugely impactful, hurtful plays that you saw from him that really kind of, I think, took a little bit of away with just how impressive he was. He's also a slot cornerback. I think that's where they want him ideally, right? Talking about outside corners, obviously Cam Hart at his size is more made for that, to be that kind of boundary guy. But I think Tarheeb still can still do that as well. And I think if out of the corners on this team, if I was to have two out there, he would still be my two, even if it's only two outside corners. He has that ability. Getting 4 interceptions is huge. He did have to play, missed tackle against Mike Evans that led to a big yards after catch situation. The reason that Broncos game was that way was because he went inside trying to get Marvin Mims, I believe it was, going around the corner. He took the inside route instead of trying to keep the outside, which is what you do, fight to the outside shoulder of the receiver. Don't let him block you inside. And that turned into a very long touchdown. But those are things that can be cleaned up. The missed tackle rate can be cleaned up. And he obviously has a God-given ability, something you can't teach, and the ability to take the ball away. But this is why the question's getting asked. Because I don't buy that you have to trade for a CB1, because it's going to cost a great deal. And you're not a CB1 away from being a Super Bowl winner, in my mind. But this is why you'd want to do it. From Laser Beaming here on Twitter, he says, buy or sell. With the much more frequent amount of wide receiver ones on our schedule this year, our defense will take a step out of the top 10 as we will get carved up through the passing game. So the reason he's saying this is because it is a ridiculous slate of receivers that they have this year. I mean, this year, talking about A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Terry McLaurin, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, DK Metcalf, Brian Thomas Jr., Tyreek Hill, and Michael Pittman Jr., and also Nico Collins. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, you're talking about, 12 guys there that might be top 20 receivers, and you have them all this season on your schedule. So I still have enough trust in Jesse Minter where I'll sell this. I still think they can get their way into the top 10 defensively, but I understand, why there's some kind of questions about, okay, do we have the secondary to go up against this, slate of receivers?
For sure, and they're going to need their defensive front and their edge rushers to help along with that, because it is going to be a gigantic undertaking trying to limit these guys. So what do? You get after the quarterback and you make that quarterback uncomfortable, and you hit him and you pick him off, and you try to force him to make mistakes, right? So you can help, try to limit the amount of time that these guys are going to have to cover. You're going to have to make sure that you limit the ab structure plays that really killed the Chargers and has killed the Chargers throughout the last few seasons. So they have to stay disciplined. They have to get after the quarterback at a higher rate. And yeah, they're going to have to just strap up and play some really good football against some amazing competition. So it's going to have to be a team effort. But, I think with the way that the Chargers play a lot of zone coverage as well is something that you have to factor in. It's going to be something that's very difficult, but I feel like Jesse Minter definitely has the staff and he has the mind to go out there and utilize what he has at his disposal, and the best way is to try to limit that effectiveness of those receivers.
I think another reason to worry about somewhat of a regression, I think the Chargers will have to be better in some ways than they were last year to be a top 10 unit this year than they were last year when they were the number 1 unit. Because the one thing they also had last year was incredible luck of going up against really bad quarterbacks too. Because it was, they did go up against Jamar Chase and Mike Evans, and guess what? Those offenses did shred the Chargers. And that is concerning. They went up against Nico Collins, and that offense did pretty well against the Chargers as well, and him specifically, right? He had a very good game against the Chargers. So you're also not going to be going up more than likely this year against quarterbacks like Spencer Rattler or Justin Fields or Gardner Minshew or Jameis Winston, right? No Aiden O'Connell this year with the trade for Geno Smith. No rookie Dre May, no Will Levis. That's a lot of bad quarterbacks that were on that list last year, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to come back to earth a little bit. How much can they stymie that, right? How much can they improve and get out of the players that they have right now to try to mitigate that as much as possible? You trust the guys they have, and they have some different pieces defensively and on that pass rush. You have the defensive line coach saying on Monday, hey, this is a more skilled group. This is as talented of a group as we had last year, maybe even more. They're going to need it, to your point, because, man, if you can't get home like you couldn't against the Buccaneers last year, and now you're going up against these receivers, man, it's going to be a long day. So I totally agree with you on that point, because they need the pass rush to maybe cover up some of that youth. But I do think with the combination of corners that they had between Dante Jackson and even Benjamin St. Juste coming off of bad years, even guys like Dean Leonard after that and Triquez Bridges, they'll be able to piece it together to get a formidable group out there to go along with Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still, who could be better in year 2 than they were in year 1. And we're just going to have to see. But I like the guys that they have. That is a scary group of wide receivers they're going to be going up against. But we still have more to get into, including, is it too soon to call Justin Eboigbe a bust? I think it is, but does that mean he's going to break out? We're going to get into all that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. All right, guys, well, we still have some more buy or sells to get into because it is Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions. And thank you to the everydayers who contributed to make today's show what it is and getting some really good conversations we haven't had yet. And thank you, as always, for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, as they make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason now that the draft is over, on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. But David, one guy we haven't talked about a lot and has probably got caught up in the wash of not just draft picks like Jamari Caldwell, but the additions that were made in free agency to the defensive line, is Justin Eboigbe. And this is a buy or sell from Cabezone, who says, buy or sell, Justin Eboigbe is a bust, and the pick should have been used on a center instead. This hits a soft spot for us, David, because we were all in on the center class last year. We would have, in a vacuum, wanted the Chargers to take a center at that spot. I just don't think that you can use that against Justin Eboigbe.
No, you can't. Absolutely not. And for me, there's absolutely no way that I can attach the label of bust to a player that really kind of had more of a redshirt season. He barely saw the football field. I mean, he was inactive for a ton of games last year. So I just think I can't sit here when you're sitting and you're talking about a 4-year commitment, a draft pick that you have here for at least 4 seasons. After 1 season of barely touching the field, you don't even know what you have in him. So you can't call him a bust. And so I do feel like, this is a player that is going to have to show some improvement, and there's a lot more bodies in that room, a lot of veterans that he's going to have to kind of compete with, whether it's Tier Tart or, Naquan Jones or Deshaun Hand. And of course, the young buck they just drafted, the dancing bear, Jamari Caldwell. So there's going to be a lot of guys, not to mention, Otito Ogbonnia as well. There's just a lot of bodies in that defensive line room. For Justin Eboigbe, he is definitely going to have to take his opportunities and make the most of them this season.
Absolutely. I liked his tape. The Chargers, took him as a guy we hadn't really heard of and weren't familiar with leading up to the draft last season. But I liked what he had to do. I was surprised that he only had 26 snaps, right? I mean, that's tough to show you anything in that amount of time. And obviously he got that amount of time because he wasn't ready to play last year. Now, saying that they should have taken a center, there were 4 centers last year that were rookies that played more than 351 snaps. All 4 of them played over 1,000 snaps, but only one of those guys was actually selected after the Chargers' 4th round pick, which they took Justin Eboigbe. And that was Bo Limmer. Bo Limmer last year had a pass blocking grade that was significantly lower than Bradley Bozeman. So very rough in pass protection as a rookie for that kid who, was a really good run blocker, but obviously, it wouldn't have solved their problems last year. Now, could one of those other guys who hadn't played and didn't get a lot of playing time last year be ready to come into a bigger role this year? That we don't know, but that's the whole point, is it's too soon to tell at this point. We'll see what Justin Eboigbe does this year. But yeah, I mean, we love that center class. We wish they would have taken a center last year, but you can't really hold that specifically against Justin Eboigbe and what happened last year. And now he's had a year to develop under a great coach who we know is a great coach in Mike Elston. But let's get to this one from Grayson and Meek from Instagram, who says, buy or sell, Justin Eboigbe with a year under his belt could lead to a Deion Henley-like breakout. Breakout or bust. And I think, David, there's a lot of gray area in between that, which is why I'm going to sell a Deion Henley type season, because Deion Henley was a top 10 linebacker in his first season starting. And I don't think that Justin Eboigbe is going to be a top 10 defensive tackle at the end of the 2025 season. Different positions, but I'm going to sell that, even though I do think he can be improved.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, we learned from Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter on the Chargers Weekly podcast that Justin Eboigbe was able to add 20 pounds of good weight to his frame, which is definitely going to be a positive for him. And we know that the Chargers kind of have their exit interviews after the season, and they had very specific plans for each players on where they can get, improvement and, be able to make an impact on the football team. And so clearly that was a part of that exit interview for Justin Eboigbe. And so hopefully that's going to help him get on the field and help him make plays when he gets there.
Yeah, and it's also important to remember he's a 4th-round pick, right? Like, this isn't someone that was supposed to start right away. And also someone, to your point, who came in as a tweener. He's a guy that played edge and on the inside at Alabama and was a rotational player there. But he came in not the size of an NFL defensive tackle. So to have him with Ben Herbert to just get the sheer size and strength that you need to play with at the next level, I think is going to help him. But you're right, he's going to have to play really well to earn snaps on this defensive line group. But I also think that there's no one kind of the guy that we see right now that's going to force him off the field. He should be able to get into the rotation this year. If he's really gaining that weight, if Jesse Minter is as high on him as he seemed to be when talking about him, he's someone that's in their plans for the defense this year. I loved his ability coming out of Alabama to hold his ground in the running game. A lot of that was on the edge and setting a super physical edge. But he fought tooth and nail to hold his ground and had that in his bag as a collegiate player and was always kind of a work in progress as far as a pass rusher goes. That's really the clearest shot to make an impact on this defensive line is where is the pass rush going to come from? If you can be a 3 technique
Great point.
that can get into the backfield and can create havoc, I promise you're going to get on the field because the Chargers don't have a ton of guys right now that are proven pass rushers on the interior and putting up big numbers there. They have big shoes to fill from Poona Ford and also Morgan Fox, who might have been their best interior rusher last year. And if he can make a big stride there, he will get on the field because pass rush is king. And we just talked about it. If you want to cover up kind of what the warts may be on the back end, you need to get a better pass rush than you had last season, which leads to a great buy or sell we have here from Steve Gradius, who says, buy or sell, Tremon Morris Brash makes the 53-man roster this year. This is a really interesting one, David. This is someone we are high on last year and now gets another shot to try to make the team in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get any easier for Tremon Morris Brash, especially after the Chargers use a 4th-round pick, bringing in Kyle Kennard. So with the Chargers, they have Khalil Mack, they got Thule, they got Bud, and of course, like I said, Kyle Kennard. The Chargers had 4 edge rushers on the team last year. So those 4 guys I just listed right there. So for me, this is definitely Tremon Morris Brash on the outside looking in, and is probably going to have to outplay or unseat a guy like a Bud Dupree to be able to make this roster. And to be quite honest with you, I find that hard to believe. So I'm going to sell it.
I'm going to sell it too, but I do think that Tremon Morris Brash is someone to keep an eye on because he won't kind of get the shine this year because he's not technically an undrafted free agent from this season. Well, he had a really good camp last year. And there was a point last year before, like obviously Bud Dupree was in the picture, but then they had, Joey Bosa, and they also had Thule, and they had Khalil Mack. So it was a different room last year, and now they have Kyle Kennard. So it would be probably a roster, construction question, right? How many edge rushers are you going to keep on this roster? But Bud Dupree, we've talked about it a little bit, might not have been as good as the 6 sacks that he put up last year may have indicated, right? And a lot of that could have been, getting helped out by some other guys having good seasons too. But I do think it will be, he's another really good locker room guy, a guy at the end of your roster that you're going, if it's close, right? And you have to make a tough decision, he's probably the guy they would keep. At the same time, I don't think Bud Dupree is a big special teams contributor, right? So if Tremon Morris Brash can come in and show that he can make an impact there, I think that'll be another great way to maybe not make the roster, but that would be his best chance to do it. I think he is another kind of practice squad guy this year who had, 4 pressures, a sack, a batted ball, 4 defensive stops last year in the preseason in 3 games. He'll get, I think, some more snaps this season to show what he can do. But I think the most likely situation is a practice squad spot. And we'll see if someone like a Kylan Guidry, someone that Daniel Pomper said stood out at training camp or at rookie minicamp, maybe he pushes for that first kind of practice squad spot. But depth is great. Tremon Morris Brash was impressive last year, and we really liked his game. Maybe he's someone that can show this year, hey, you can't keep me off the field. I mean, because that's what he would have to do. He would have to go nuclear in the preseason for him to have a chance at the roster. And we'll see what he's able to do. But I do like his game a lot. We liked him last year. And I think as far as, depth on the practice squad, I think you could do a lot worse. But he's going to have to do some special things if he wants to crack at that true 53-man roster on opening day. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. But it is your team every day. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow. But until then, make sure you're finding us wherever you can by following us on all of our social media, where everyone hit us up today for the buy or sells at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and also our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. But you can also make sure you never miss the show by subscribing or following for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listening and subscribing wherever you get your podcast from. Turn the notifications on so you know every day that you're going to get your Chargers fixed. But thank you to the everydayers out there. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow with all the latest Chargers news. We do have some things going on. We'll be back here tomorrow with the latest. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.